Alright. So I'm Mitchell in third class Talbot with,
Mr. Millard.
and our presentation will be on the movie Moneyball. So first slide will be leadership versus management, and for this we kind of focus on Billy for the most part here, and we just would like to have your guys' opinions whether or not he's more of a leader or a manager, or how we develop through the movie into one or the other.
I'd say in the beginning he definitely was a manager, and that's the only thing that he wanted to be. Considering the fact that he wouldn't travel with the team, wouldn't interact with any of the players, and I think he even told what was his name, Pete, Jonah Hill, that he didn't do that so they're easier to cut. So I think in that respect he was most definitely a manager in the beginning of the film.
So I agree with that, and then he started with just the pure logical decision making and efficient results, and then kind of moved more towards some leadership capabilities towards the end, when he talked to Justice while he was doing batting practice, I think, and kind of inspired him to try and get him to be a leader and convince him to buy into the system, and that he wasn't going to be able to be the player that he used to be, but he could try and lead and inspire the younger guys. And he was also sitting down with each player as they were trying to develop the team and starting to kind of build that relationship to help him improve, which I think was showing some leadership. But he was still more of a manager than a leader, I think, throughout.
I would say he was a little bit more of a leader. Definitely has the manager and qualities and everything that's going into it, but he had a very clear vision from the very start of the movie when he was talking with the owner. He's telling the owner, my standard, he was saying, my standard is a championship, right? In the beginning, he was like, my standard is championship, that's where I'm going to be, and I need you to do everything that you can to help me get there. So his vision was pretty clear on where he was going to be and what he wanted for the organization as a whole. And I think that's a big part of being a leader, is kind of setting a vision and a goal for everyone to see and to achieve. And then he also set in place a plan when he met Pete eventually on how he was going to achieve that goal.
Why do you think he started to at the beginning of the movie, how you guys talk about how he doesn't want to have the personal relationships with his players? What do you think made him change his mind halfway through to start doing that, I guess?
I think it was honestly just necessity, because his coaching staff didn't understand the system he was trying to create, and didn't, because his coaching aspect was sitting down, it was all about the statistics and looking at what pitches to go for and stuff like that. And so really, he almost had to sit down with his right hand guy to do it.
Yeah, while he kind of what Bo said, he did use stats and logic, which obviously I think set them apart from most of the teams. But at the end of the day, baseball is played by people, and every person is different. And the way that you interact on a baseball field is pretty important to how the game is played and if you can win. So I think he realized that just running it by the numbers on paper will work. There's also still that human element to the game that he needs to somehow influence in order to kind of get that unit cohesiveness up and running, to get the actual system that he's trying to run in order to become effective in the way that he wanted it to be.
You also see him really get inspired during that winning streak, and just him rewatching the games. You see that he's inspired by his people, so he puts more of a hand-on approach after that.
Do you think his coaching staff, with how they resisted and pushed back with what he was doing, helped him in himself developing as a leader more than a manager? Because like was stated earlier, the coaching staff was not going along with his vision. So what he had to do was build trust with the individual players, go to the individual players and convey his plan and his standards and his goals and what they should and shouldn't do on the individual level, building trust. So do you think that his coaching staff pushing back and not really following what he's wanting at the beginning helped him in developing himself into a better leader by the end of the movie?
Yeah, so like we've been saying, he started really talking to the players for necessity. So like when they went on the losing streak, it was like in the very beginning of the season. They weren't winning a lot of games, and they had the players that he brought in, but then they weren't being played the way he like it had a vision for them to be played. So once like the trade deadline came or whatever, he kind of forced the coach to play the players. He then now had to figure out like how he was going to get the players to play exactly how they wanted. So it was up to him to kind of take on a more leadership and active role and like explain to the players, okay, like this is how we're going to win games. I just need you guys to do X, Y, Z.
Alright, so like based on these leadership characteristics that are up here, what do you guys think that Billy does well throughout the movie, and do you have any examples of that? Either the vision, rhetoric skills, building trust, or personalized leadership style? Any input else?
He takes ownership for the failures of the team, and then
Yeah.
he delves out the responsibility for the successes of the team. So the example of this was when, in the very beginning, when he's talking to the head coach that's out in the field, and they're talking in the offices, and he says, no, that's on me that we lost the championship, and not the head coach. But then when he's sitting with Pete, and they're overhearing the radio broadcast saying that it was all the head coach that did this, and he's like Billy's putting them under such like stress, and he's making the team better. And Pete says, "Can you believe this?" And he says, "Like no, like all I heard was that we won 7 games." And he's okay with people ascribing that success to somebody else.
Yeah, so that was actually the clip that we were going to show, but that's all right. So what do you think that says about his leadership style? Like, do you think he will put the individuals on the team before himself as a servant leader, or do you think he just sees the team in general as like a servant leader?
I'd say it's the team overall.
Okay.
I mean, he was pretty, not ruthless, but like, I mean, he was willing to cut people when he had to,
Yeah.
send them down. That was all for the good of the team, not necessarily the good of an individual.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Going off of like characteristics, also I think like from the beginning he was very transparent about his vision and what he wanted, and it was pretty polarizing for the people in the athletics team. So do you think this was a good idea, or do you think he should have kind of went in at a slower pace and not show so much about what he wanted and kind of like go in full force?
I think having a clear vision is a good idea, period, regardless of how ambitious that vision is. I think that the struggle that Billy had, though, was having his rhetoric skills and that trust building to align with his vision. It was like hard to inspire that change and to get people on board with his vision because he was lacking in those rhetoric skills and I guess the trust with his peers and the team. But I think that having a clear vision is important to kind of expedite the change process. If it's unclear, then it's harder to inspire people that way.
I don't necessarily think that it was like a lack of skills on Billy's part on why like he faced so much resistance. I think it was just simply like this is something completely new to a game that's over 100 years old. This is how we've been doing it for, when he's talking to head scout, I think that this head scout was a head scout for what, like 30 years or something?
Yeah.
And for him to kind of just like completely like flip everything on its head and try something new right after, a pretty good season, just coming up a little short, but now they're like losing guys or whatever. So I don't think it was like a lack of skill on Billy's part. I think that, yeah, okay, with resistance comes a little bit of lack of trust, but I think that Billy's ability to build trust within the players as the movie goes on is a strength of his, and I think that the resistance just comes from new change and those people being scared of that change.
Yeah, kind of building off of that, I really enjoyed the parts of the movie where like there was people who were resisting him and he didn't really like hesitate to fire him. Like the head scout was like, at one point he said something and Billy was like, "I'm not going to fire you," and then he basically just told me to go F off. And he's like, all right, well now I'll fire you. And then he picked like, I forget what the guy was, but he's like, do you know anything about baseball? And the kid's like, no. He goes, all right, you're the new head scout. Like, you're just gonna do what I tell you to do. And like, he was picking players that like really had never had a shot in like the major leagues before and stuff like that. But still were good on paper. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of going on what Villanova said, like surrounding himself with people who not were just like yes men, but also like people who were willing to go along with him as well. So it's a good balance.
Alice?
I mean, from really introducing that paradigm shift and change, the resistance is gonna be inevitable. And then, with the performance graph that we've learned about, there's this sharp decline when the change is introduced in performance. And so it's really just him battling against that and finding that perseverance to stick it through and then eventually reach that, improvement in performance.
Sure.
I think it's important to point out that Billy doesn't really need the scouts to be in on this. They don't make any decisions, they only advise him, and he has the ultimate say, so it'd be nice to have them on board with his plan, but at the end of the day, he doesn't need them to be. He'll just do what he wants to do to execute his plan. So getting them on board wasn't really his biggest.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next slide here. Okay, so for the ALR model, so there's a lot of reflection that goes on with Billy himself and with some other, the Red Sox manager, you see it a little bit at the end there, and Peter does it too. What, are there any like examples you guys can think of, or what effect this has on Billy, his style, how he changes things, or anything like that?
Yeah, so it takes us a lot through Billy's playing days.
Yeah.
In high school, and coming out of high school, and then going straight to the pros. And they kind of focus on his decision to not go to Stanford on a full ride, but instead go straight to the Mets. And then kind of how his pro career was not very good. And I think that Billy does a lot of reflection on that and on how he scouts players, knowing that, the numbers. When the scouts were saying that, they were like bringing up all these like big name people and saying like he can do everything, they're saying like exactly what they used to say about Billy, and then Billy knows exactly how that turned out. So he was hesitant and to kind of go with the scouts, kind of having that background knowledge, just because a kid might have everything, it's kind of mental on their success.
Do you think he ever had any idea? Like through his reflections, do you think he ever thought of something like this before Peter introduced it to him? Or do you think once Peter introduced it to him, then like with his reflections, it just kind of took off from there?
I think he was looking for something different. Like he obviously was very frustrated with how the season was going, or how the last season went, and then kind of just how the postseason unfolded. Just like losing all their star players that like they relied on as like their centerpieces, and then having them kind of ripped away and knowing that they couldn't compete with larger teams. I just think he didn't really know how to go about it. Like he even went where he met like Peter in like the Cleveland like, office, I guess what it was. Like still trying to like haggle for players like the same old way that he was doing before, just for like really not good players. So I think Peter kind of opened the door for him to like exploring this new, or at least finding this new way in which to go about the game. But I think he was kind of lost in trying to find what it was.
And then like on a smaller scale, we compared the examples of, say, like the Red Sox owner who he sees what Billy does with this season and says like the Yankees had $120 million and you guys had $39 million, I think it was, and your seasons were the same amount of wins, like very equivalent. So he sees what Billy does. I think he reflects on that, and then 2 years later, the Red Sox won the World Series with those tactics. So that's one other example we had. Is there anything else you guys can think of for reflection? Maybe with like Peter, probably. Now we can move on to the next slide. Okay. Actually, I think we have a clip to show here.
trying to solve a problem here. Not like this, you're not even looking at the problem. Very aware of the problem. Okay, good. What's the problem? Look, Billy, we all understand what the problem is. We have to replace. Okay, good. What's the problem? The problem is we have to replace 3 key players in our lineup. What's the problem?
Same as it's ever been. We've got to replace these guys with what we have existing.
No, what's the problem, Barrett? We need 38 home runs, 120 RBIs, and 47 doubles to replace. The problem we're trying to solve is that there are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. It's an unfair game. And now we've been gutted, organ donors for the rich, Boston's taking our kidneys, Yankees taking our heart, and you guys are sitting around talking the same old good body nonsense like we're selling jeans, like we're looking for Fabio. We've got to think differently. We are the last dog at the bowl. You see what happens to the runt of the litter? He dies.
Really, that's a very touching story and everything, but I think we're all very much aware of what we're facing here. You have a lot of experience and wisdom in this room. Now, you need to have a little bit of faith and let us do the job of replacing Giambi.
Is there another first baseman like Giambi? No. And if there was, could we afford him?
No.
Then what the fuck are you talking about, man? If we try to play like the Yankees in here, we will lose to the Yankees out there.
Alright, so that was what we believe would be a real good example for single and double loop learning. So you can see in this conference room that all the scouts and his coaches have this single loop. Hey, we've been doing this the way, we've been doing this for I don't know how long. We're going to just continue to do it that way. While Billy has this double loop learning and kind of realizes that the way that they've been doing things has been wrong because they've been doing it the same as everyone else. And he's trying to flip that on its head. This is the first starting pitch. What are some other examples in this film for single and double loop learning?
Actually, just to build on something real quick, do you think, if you put yourself in the perspective of one of the scouts, do you think that they're justified in their actions? Because, I mean, this tactic, it's never been tried by anyone before. Nobody believes in it. It's not only, like, just the scouts in the room, it's the entire MLB. Like, they talk about the whole movie. So if you put yourself in their perspective, do you think that they're justified in thinking, like, that this is crazy and being single loop learners over here?
Well, by changing tactics, they're taking a huge risk. They're already like low budget. And so if these tactics fail, then that's just going to screw them even harder, right?
Yeah.
So like changing tactics when you're at the bottom of the barrel, for them, it's not a great idea, right? Even though, because last season they had a pretty good season. So if they continue on what they're doing, maybe there's no risk that they need to take.
Wouldn't changing tactics, though, when you are on the bottom of the barrel, be the right move to do so that you can get on top?
Well, in this sense, since it's such a new idea, there's such a lot of risk, and since it's never been tried before, right? And if they're going to try it, they're going to lose all their money, and they won't have enough. They can't continue for next season, right?
Yeah, kind of like what Lim said, there's a difference between using tactics that are different and have been used before and that are somewhat familiar, and there's difference like just reinventing the whole game. So to Hillary's question, I do think that they're justified in thinking that, yeah, just because like it's so taboo. Just, I mean, all of them have been doing that their whole life, and then just to kind of say like after one season that was actually pretty good. Said, all right, we're going to change literally everything, the way we do everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that there's been success beforehand is a big factor on like why they're so hesitant. It'd be like one thing if like they're like being a constant failure and we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like that's insanity. So it would make sense for Billy to like want to flip it on his head. But since there's been like a relative like consistent success, that's what makes it like okay, like well, why are we doing this, you know, we've been successful while doing this before, so, you know, what's the point of changing it, you know?
I don't know. I think because like all the like the team got gutted, right? Like the 3 left players are gone. Like I think all the scouts in the room knew like this is going to be a different type of season than the season before. I think it was more about like this new strategy is threatening what they do, like their careers, their like influence over Billy and influence over the team. And I think it was a lot about like trying to protect their kind of power and sphere of influence instead of letting this kid come in, this like computer program that's doing their job better than them.
Yeah, so you can see why bringing up new ideas and why the change was so drastic for them, because it's been working the way that they've been running baseball, as you guys have said. Like, so it's completely justified their reactions for being single loop and not wanting to change the entire game.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show how, I mean, earlier during the course, the CO asked us who we thought, if we were single or double loop learners. I think a lot of us said single. So I think it just goes to show how hard it is, really, when you put yourself in perspective, to be a double loop learner, and the opportunities that you need to like really think about and the considerations you take into things into consideration from everyone's perspective to get like the best ideas. So I think it's really important. And then we're going to show another clip here on double loop.
There is an epidemic failure within the game to understand what is really happening. And this leads people who run Major League Baseball teams to misjudge their players and mismanage their teams. I apologize.
Go on.
Okay, people who run ball clubs, they think in terms of buying players. Your goal shouldn't be to buy players, your goal should be to buy wins. And in order to buy wins, you need to buy runs. You're trying to replace Johnny Damon. The Boston Red Sox see Johnny Damon and they see a star who's worth $7.5 million a year. When I see Johnny Damon, what I see is an imperfect understanding of where runs come from. The guy's got a great glove. He's a decent leadoff hitter. He can steal bases, but is he worth the $7.5 million a year that the Boston Red Sox are paying him? No. Baseball thinking is medieval. They are asking all the wrong questions. And if I say it to anybody, I'm ostracized. I'm a leper, so that's why I'm cagey about this with you. That's why I respect you, Mr. Bean. If you want full disclosure, I think it's a good thing that you got Damon off your payroll. I think it opens up all kinds of interesting possibilities.
Where you from, man?
Maryland.
Where'd you go to school?
Alright, so obviously from that clip you can see that Peter and Billy are really the double loop learners throughout the movie. Do you think that they sort of convince the staff? Do you think they make them into double loop learners sort of, like by changing the situation at all throughout the movie? Or do you think they really continue to be the only ones who see their perspective throughout the rest of the movie?
That continuously throughout the movie because, well, the scouts never got on board with it and he ended up firing one. And then the head coach wouldn't get on board with his plan, so he had to trade Pena to another team just to get what he wanted because the coach was so resistant to it. I think they were the only two who stuck with the vision and nobody else wanted to go with it.
Yes, a good point.
What about at the very end with the last game where he put in Chris Pratt's character? Yeah, I forget. Hadberg? Yeah, we put in Hadberg. That went completely in line with Billy's whole idea and plan.
But I thought he was just next to him in the lineup, to be honest. I didn't even hold him out.
I think that is just a level of conformity and not necessarily the GM being a double loop learner all of a sudden. I think that, I feel like it's pretty hard to like make someone a double loop learner.
Yeah.
I think it's just a level of conformity to say, okay, you know what, I'll just conform to your vision, or what you want. And I think that's really all that happened. I don't think anybody went from a single or a double loop learner. I think they just conformed.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that. I agree with that. Next slide here. So, looking at these examples for the types of power, what do you think that Billy relies on, and do you think it changes throughout the course of the movie between these expert, referent, legitimate, or coercive power times?
I think Billy just uses his legitimate coercive power.
Okay. Give examples for coercive power.
Coercive power, yeah, he has the ability to fire people.
Yeah.
As unknown, and give their jobs to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. And then legitimate.
Legitimate, he's the GM, right?
Yeah. Okay. Alice?
So as the movie goes on, he gets more of his referent power when he starts communicating with his players.
Yeah.
Gets them like through this personal relationship that he establishes to actually carry out his master plan.
Okay. Buzz?
I'd say it was kind of more expert because like even though he was kind of establishing that relationship, it was like all based on like statistics and like what exactly needs to be done. And really like his speaking skills were kind of atrocious. Like his one speech to the team was like, "Yeah, you guys don't look like a winning team, but try and play like one."
Yeah.
And he walked out. Like he didn't. I never felt like he really had like referent power from the team, but they started to respect the results of his game.
So you didn't think like him one-on-one telling them like you need to be hitting these pitches and like just working with the players one-on-one telling them what they need to do?
I still think that goes back to expert because that's like the knowledge that he's applying with the statistics to get them to play better.
Okay.
I also think like with his legitimate, I don't know if it was following coursiveness, but when they're like picking players for the year to come, with all the scouts in the room and they're writing them on like the whiteboard strips and kind of throwing them up on the board.
Yeah.
You basically ask the scouts like, "So who do you think we should pick?" And they're like, "This guy is probably our best option." He goes, "Nope, we're picking this guy." And like put him up on the board, and then everyone would groan and like people would fight him. And he goes, "It doesn't matter, like we're picking him." So I guess there's a little bit of legitimate and coercive power because like obviously he's the GM, so it's his say, but he's also like kind of forcing the scouts to get on board with it.
Did he use any reward power throughout the movie? Can anyone give an example? We could. So just putting the question out there.
I guess you could say that winning games was a reward.
Yeah.
Towards the end, once they like saw that, okay, like now we're using like Billy's tactics and we're winning games, we should probably keep doing it, keep winning games. It's pretty rewarding as an athlete.
I'd say like maybe just giving players a chance, like that hadn't had a chance before was kind of like a form of reward.
I was going to say when he hires Hatterberg, like he's out of a job, so he's kind of using reward power just by giving him that chance to play first base.
Yeah, and then there's also that scene when the relief pitcher, the guy who throws funny, he comes up to Billy before their first game, I think, and he says, like, "Thank you for giving me this chance. Nobody else has ever given me like a shot in the big leagues before like this." So I think that was kind of an example of a reward power in that way. We're going to show some clips on some influence tactics and get your guys' opinions on them.
What am I missing?
These are hard moves to explain to people.
Why is that a problem, Pete?
Don't make an emotional decision.
David, don't press me on 3.
Look, we're gonna shake things up. Dave, Haney's going on the block, give my first call. Tries to make the rest of the team look bad. He's gonna be a rookie of the year, you know. He's an all-star, Dave. No, I want to leave her in cash. Okay. You got 5 minutes. I'm not waiting.
Billy, Haney is an all-star, okay? And if you dump him and this Hatterberg thing doesn't work out the way you want to, you know this This is the kind of decision that gets you fired. It is.
Yes, you're right. I may lose my job. In which case, I'm a 44-year-old guy with a high school diploma and a daughter I'd like to be able to send to college. You're 25 years old, with a degree from Yale and a pretty impressive apprenticeship. I don't think we're asking the right question. I think the question we should be asking is, do you believe in this thing or not?
I do.
It's a problem you think we need to explain ourselves. Don't. To anyone.
And then I'm going to show one other clip before we go back to the slide here.
Good question. Do you expect these guys to produce more? Get in. Losing fun? Is losing fun? No. What are you having fun for? That's what losing sounds like.
So just taking those clips into account, and looking at these influence tactics, what do you think Billy uses throughout the movie to influence his team and his staff? Between maybe like inspirational appeals or personal appeals, we thought were big ones. Everybody else want to comment on those or anything else to add?
I guess I just noticed a general shift in his personal appeals from the beginning of the movie to the latter end of the movie.
Yeah.
That second clip you showed right before he got into the locker room, just a few seconds before where you played, like it shows like the head or the coach like was kind of like avoiding him in the hallways.
Yeah,
And, like
yeah.
a bunch of his peers were kind of like avoiding him, and then he came into that room and kind of just like was an ass, and I guess he didn't really appeal to his peers during that time. But then we discussed later on how people and the team were more willing to come up to him and, thanking him and stuff. And so I guess just that's an observation of how his personal appeals had changed.
Yeah, so with that clip in the locker room, I kind of see it as almost sort of pressure tactics, because this is like, he really didn't have any relationships with the players before that. That was kind of like the first time he really like talked to them, I guess. So I feel like it just showed them like how upset he was, and that he really wanted them to like step up their game, and that he was in charge sort of. And then with Peter, I would really like inspirational, because he's showing not only like how much he's risking, but how much he believes in it in order to get their goals achieved. So just
Are there any power or influence tactics that you think should have been used more, or just have like clashed with his authenticity?
I think if he like had tried to change like how he was, it would have been definitely would have like factored into how authentic he was being. Like he's pretty real. Kept everything very straightforward. Never really sugarcoated anything, and that's just kind of how he was. And that didn't really change throughout the movie. And I think the players appreciated that.
I just have a question on like your thoughts about this, but in the first clip that you showed, he said like you don't have to explain yourself to anyone or like explain your vision and what you're doing to anyone.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a good way of thinking? Or
I think to an extent, with his situation, I think it is because he's trying to shake things up so much in a way that people haven't seen it done before. And there's really not going to be anybody besides Peter that is going to believe him on this. So I think in this situation, he has to take that ideal. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, so I think Peter was concerned about was like media concern and just like explaining to like outside people, like outside the organization on like why they just traded like the future rookie of the year and like future all-star. And I think that Billy has a right in the sense that everybody outside of your sphere, like it doesn't matter what they think, like who cares? It's like, it's about the people within the organization, and if he can get everyone together on the same page inside the organization, then everybody outside is like irrelevant at that point, you know, they're just in the way. They're not, you know, the people outside don't need to know everything going on the inside because they're not relevant, so.
Okay. All right, we're gonna do that next slide. So for this one, is there a certain character that, we think there's 3 characters that fit each of these descriptions pretty well, so in your guys' opinion, is there a certain character that fits for each one of these, assertive, acquiescent, and aggressive with the movie?
I think it was Peter, right? Was that the character?
Yeah, he's the, I guess the statistics guy.
Yeah. I think he was acquiescent, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially during the beginning. He kept on like apologizing for his opinions for speaking out or whatever. He was less assertive at that time. But Billy kind of validated him more and gained his confidence and was more assertive, I guess, towards the end. But he definitely was one of the characters that stood out to me as acquiescent.
Yeah, so we sort of placed Billy with assertive, Peter with acquiescent, and then the head scout with aggressive. So you're going to show a clip now on that, actually.
Aggravating. Why? Wow. May I speak candidly? Sure, go ahead. Major League Baseball and its fans, they're gonna be more than happy to throw you and Google under the bus if you keep doing what you're doing here. You don't put a team together with a computer, Billy. No? No. Baseball isn't just numbers. It's not science. If it was, then anybody could do what we're doing, but they can't because they don't know what we know. They don't have our experience and they don't have our intuition. Okay? Billy, you got a kid in there that's got a degree in economics from Yale. You got a scout here with 29 years of baseball experience. You're listening to the wrong one. Now, there are intangibles that only baseball people understand. You're discounting what scouts have done for adapt to die. This is about you and your shit, isn't it? 20 years ago, some scout got it wrong. Whoa. Okay. Now you're going to declare war on the system.
Okay, my turn. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't look at a kid and predict his future any more than I can. I've sat at those kitchen tables with you and listened to you tell those parents, when I know, I know. And when it comes to your son, I know. And you don't. You don't.
Okay. I don't give a shit about friendship, this situation, or the past. Major League Baseball thinks the way I think. You're not going to win. And I'll give you a nickel's worth of free advice. You're never going to get another job when shot fires you after this catastrophic season you're about to set us all up for. And you're going to have to explain to your kid why you're working at Dick's Sporting Goods.
I'm not going to fire you.
Fuck you, Billy.
No, I will.
So obviously the aggressiveness doesn't really work out for the head scout here, but throughout the movie you can see we did place Billy as assertive, but I think that he also uses like some aggressive tactics in scenes of the movie. Do you think what is the difference in why Billy's effective with using his aggression rather than say like the head scout? Like how do you think he balances it?
Or do you think it just works because of his legitimate power?
I think that's part of it. What Top said is definitely like, okay, like, Billy's just like in a position where he's gonna have power. But also I think it's like very situational. So I'd say when he was in the locker room and he was like busting up the radio and flipping over the water jug, that's pretty aggressive. But in this situation, it was necessary to like display to the team like, hey, this is unacceptable. What we're doing, we're not here to lose games. We're here to win games, and we need to have a change in mindset. And and the way, and like by doing that in an aggressive manner, it made it very clear to the players that it was unacceptable. So I think it is very situational, and I think that he used it well.
Do you think there's just a right time and a wrong time to use his tactics, basically? Does anybody else has any input on this? All right, next one. Okay, motivational approaches. So, based on these theories down here, Maslow's hierarchy, achievement orientation, goal setting, operant approach, empowerment, what do you think that Billy relies on to motivate his team and his staff, especially after like the times of their performance gap when they're down, losing a lot of games? What do you think Billy does to motivate them, get them back into place?
Or do you think that he finds people that are like already motivated and builds a team off of it?
Yeah. Jordan?
There was that small little scene with Hatterberg when he told the first base coach to like give him some motivation, help him build confidence for being a first baseman because he was never a first baseman, he always was a pitcher. So, I guess
Maybe empowerment, maybe?
probably, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of making that comparison as well. I thought just empowerment by maybe just giving players that nobody else saw as valuable, just giving them a chance. It sort of gives them some empowerment. Is there anybody else have anything?
Both brought up the scene earlier. I forget the guy's name. He was in the batting cages. He was like telling them, like, hey, like I know we both know you're not the player like that you used to be, like 5 years ago or whatever. But the player that you are now is perfect for our organization. I need you to like step up and be a leader. So that's pretty empowering. I'm telling him like, hey, like you're the veteran, you're the old guy on the team. Like I need you to be there to motivate and give confidence to the younger guys on the team.
Do you think that you can apply the goal setting theory to Billy's tactics? Because a lot of times he speaks with the owner about like we're gonna win this many games by scoring like this many runs and things. Do you think that falls all the way down to like the team, or do you think that's just kind of higher level?
It definitely could. I mean, I think the players are concerned about winning games just as much as Billy is. So I think that's kind of a goal that everyone has that he doesn't necessarily have to like set.
Okay.
I think that when they were losing games, I think it was something that needed to be reminded. But I think in the back of everyone's mind, the goal is always winning.
Yeah.
This is a small observation, but like, just that point in the movie where like they had to pay $1 to like get soap from the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a small thing that changed from like them having to pay for it to them getting it free. Was just like that transition from him like doing his team is kind of like a currency or just like some little like piece of the puzzle to him actually like providing for them and showing that they're taken care for like
Okay.
Just another example, like the picture, people didn't want him just because he looks weird. So Billy saw the statistics and like the talent behind that. So another example of empowerment and giving him the opportunity.
Okay. So the developmental stages, forming, storming, norming, performing. I think it's pretty obvious that you can see this within the team alone. But do you think that this occurs within the staff? mainly like with Art Howe, the coach, and his relationship with it, or the scouts in general as well? Do you think that Art Howe really ever gets on board with it, or he just kind of does what he has to do?
He just kind of does what he has to do.
Okay.
He talked a lot about how his like contract only had, he only had 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah.
And Billy was in no rush to like give him an extension or whatever. So in the beginning, I remember he was saying like, I'm playing the team so that I have like, I can in a way that I can explain to like,
Job
other
interviews.
job interviews and stuff. And Billy was like, what? He didn't really care. And then eventually like he kind of put the coach into a situation where he didn't really have a choice but to conform. So I'm not really sure if he ever was like fully on board. It was more just like he didn't really have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think even though the coach wasn't fully on board, that's still part of like the norming phase. Like even though he's just going along with what Billy's doing because he has to, I think that's still part of that norming phase.
Okay. And then Alice touched on the performance gap already, but as far as the team goes, do you think it was really like the team going through these developmental stages that pushed their performance, or do you think it was the situational changes that Billy invoked by cutting all these players that finally led to them being able to make the performance stage and go on a 20-game win streak?
I said a little bit of both. I mean, they definitely like needed to come together and gel. So as has been said, like these are like guys that really haven't been given a big opportunity like this to play for a Major League Baseball team. So there was that aspect of them just like learning how there's like a learning curve there on like how things are done. They had to come together as a team to build some unit cohesion and things like that. But then also you can bring into the fact that like Billy's system, like the system that he had in place, just needed time as well to kind of unfold.
And then this one's kind of stretchy, but do you think you could sort of apply this to the MLB in general, as far as them getting on board with Billy's like idea, or Billy and Peter's like tactics? Do you think that like most of the MLB, like you can see the Red Sox afterwards getting on board with it, Alice?
Yeah, I don't think they had to suffer the same performance gap though, because there was already evidence that the system worked.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have to suffer as much through that drop in performance that the Athletics did.
Okay.
Yeah, like the inherent risk of trying to like come up with this new system wasn't prevalent for all the other teams. So I feel like they really could just, like Ellis said, look at the evidence instead of just having faith that it would work. So I mean, I feel like as long as they followed the guidelines for what Billy set out, then they had the relative same success to an extent.
Also because these larger teams have more money, they have a greater ability to take more risk, and so they'll face less backlash when doing so.
Okay, yes.
So just to kind of close off that idea, during the meeting between Billy and the Red Sox owner, he made the comment, what was it? It was, the first man through the wall always gets bloodied. So just to kind of close off that thought process, I've written that down.
Okay, next slide. Competing values framework. So basically, we were thinking about just looking at the MLB and the Oakland A's. Where would you place them on the either hierarchy, market, meritocracy, or clan, based on their stability, flexibility, internal and external factors? So starting with the MLB, where do you think you guys would place them on this chart throughout the movie? Alice?
Hierarchy.
Yeah, that's what we said as well. Where's your reasoning, I guess?
I couldn't see any external focuses throughout any of the organizations. It seemed to all be internally focused on trading in players. I guess if you consider a group being a team, then there would be external focus with other teams, but Mostly internal. And then stability and control, because they were going with the norms that's been established for 150
Okay.
years.
Would you see like the, so Peter talks about how the media will react to them trading players. Do you think that's sort of an external focus that the MLB also puts on? How the media will react to certain decisions that teammates make on their teams? Those?
And like first and foremost, like all these things are like businesses.
Yeah.
So the focus has to be on the customer, which is like the people like buying jerseys and buying tickets and stuff. So I'd say they do have some external focus on that, which is, and that part does drive in some of the decisions to keep it stable.
Yeah. Alice?
I think the improvement of the internal factors, so like winning games and getting better performance on the field, will lead to that better external approval.
Okay.
So I think they're interrelated.
Gotcha.
I kind of agree with both on this one, just because, like, if you win games and you know you're really really good and you have good players, and people will pay for your stuff, or you go see your games. But if you take the fans completely out of, like, and this goes for any like sporting industry, like if there's no fans and no money, then what's the point? Like, you might as well just have like a pickup game with your buddies.
Yeah.
So I think there is quite a bit of external focus for any team, and just MLB in general, because I mean, like Joe said, it's a business. They're making money.
Alright. And then what about the Oakland A's? You think they're also a hierarchy, or would you guys put them in a different category of this chart? We were thinking more, well, I personally, I was thinking more of a clan, because the flexibility. I think that they still have an internal focus on winning games, because that's everybody's goal in sports. But the flexibility, just because of how fast Billy Beane was like trading, firing, and hiring players just to get rid of people to change their lineup in the situation. Would you guys agree with that, or do you think they would be still more of a hierarchy? No. That's all right. We can move on to the next one. A little bit easier here. All right, resistance. So we're gonna start off with a clip for this one. We're gonna start here.
You're not worried, right?
No.
Okay.
10 more seconds.
Pena.
Okay. You want dying right? Justice DHing, Pena on the bench, Hatterberg at first. And anyone but Mags first out of the pen.
You want Pena on the bench?
That's right. So you can play Hattie.
Pena is not only the best first baseman on the roster, he's the only first baseman on the roster.
Hattie gets on base more than Pena. In fact, 20% more.
And his fielding?
His fielding does not matter.
Well, I've heard enough of this conversation.
Have you?
And I disagree with you. Plain and simple. Moreover, I'm playing my team in a way that I can explain in job interviews next winter. Okay?
So, as we've discussed since the beginning of this movie, Billy and his idea has been faced resistance since it was first pitched, as resistance is an inevitability with the introduction of change, and this huge paradigm shift offers huge resistance from players, coaches, the media. Besides the examples of resistance that we've talked about already, what are some that might be a little bit unconventional when you think of resistance, but Billy also faces?
You can use these based on like the player scouts.
Yeah.
Alice?
I'll say maybe Pete's aversion to exert power.
Okay.
Kind of like sitting down players and telling them that they're cut, and him like kind of teaching Pete, this is what you got to do. Like it took him a while to really form into that role.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Yeah, do you think that the players on his team were resistant to the way that he was trying to run the lineup? Do you think they would be upset when they trade their all-star first baseman just because Billy wants to change the lineup? Do you think there's resistance there?
Not a little bit, not a lot.
Okay.
I think most of the players at least the players that they picked up over in the off season, were players that didn't have a lot of opportunities, so they're ready to go and ready just to kind of get on the field. But then also, players know that it's business as usual. I mean, it sucks, but I think most pro athletes are aware that you can get cut and traded. Kind of have to blink of an eye, and they really don't have any say in it. They just kind of have to move on.
I like to think one of the big resistance points that Billy had was the resources and funds. So as we discussed in class, when you were trying to implement a plan, there are the three aspects, 3 steps, and the last one is resources, what they can use to make it. So Billy had the vision. He had his plan, his system all set up so that they could win games, but he just didn't have the money, in my opinion, which is where the Red Sox were able to adopt his plan and able to win the World Series. So like at the beginning when Amano said he wasn't even able to stock his own soda machines for free for the team. So I like that whole resource aspect and how we had the picture at the very beginning of the slide that if they could win the game with the money that they had, they could just change the entire game, change the entire system.
Do you guys think that there's more resistance sort of inside the MLB, like say with the scouts and other teams, how they view them, or outside, like the media and the public? Like you can see during a lot of the clips they talk about, they'll have like radio hosts talking about like, oh, Billy Beane, it was a good theory, but it just didn't work out. So you think that more of the resistance on his end comes from outside or inside baseball directly?
I think outside. So like you said, we heard like the radio host saying like, at least at the beginning, when they were losing games, like they just couldn't do it. And then eventually when they lost like the last game of the series, they were saying like, oh, just like, it was a good run, but like teams with like this amount of money just can't win games. Like it's just like not plausible in the eyes of like the media or whatever. But then you hear like, the Red Sox manager saying, that it was absolutely astonishing, like the way that they ran the team, and with that amount of money, they had a replica season of like the New York Yankees, who are like powerhouses when it comes to money in baseball. So I think there's more resistance from the media and the public than with the MLB.
Okay.
I beg to differ and say that most of the resistance Billy got was from inside his own organization.
Mm-hmm.
Like you saw Art, like he had like his set players that he like wanted to start, and the head coach was like, no, like I control the starting like lineup. Like that's not your call. And just a bunch of other stuff, whether it was like the money that the owner was willing to give Billy or whatnot. And I feel like a lot of the outside resistance was more so just criticism, not necessarily like people opposing Billy and like the way that he was running his system, kind of just like pointing out flaws and kind of just trying to tear it down, but not necessarily like active resistance, like preventing him from doing it, if that makes sense.
And I think another example with the art house scene is a good way of how changing the situation can sometimes be easier. In the way that Billy changed the situation by getting rid of the players that he doesn't want in the lineup anymore. So I think that's a very good example of how changing the situation can help.
Another factor is like his place in life right now. He's at like a village and he has like a daughter, so that might hurt the ability to take a risk because he has those responsibilities. So do you think that was a factor, or was that just kind of like part of his outside life, outside baseball?
I think it raised the stakes for him a little bit. Like, obviously, he expressed concern with it. But I don't think at one point or another he was like, I need to stop this in order to keep it safe just for my daughter and like my situation, just to save my own skin. I think he believed in it enough to the point where he was willing to risk it all, like even possibly his daughter's future, just to prove that he was right and that the system works. So while I do think it was like an actual concern of his and something that he deeply considered, I don't think it was a key point of resistance for him. I mean, like, it wasn't debilitating, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's the right word, but.
And then that scene with Art Howe, he says he's playing the team, how he can explain job interviews, sort of. Well, what do you think that shows, like, about his character? Do you think there's any, like, if you put yourself in his shoes, you think it would be sort of justified? Or do you think he's just being completely selfish at this point in time? Both?
I mean, I think it goes back to, like, that's his career.
Yeah.
And he's trying to do what's right. I mean, he probably has a family, wife, kids, like, I think it is justified with that big a risk on, coming down on you.
Yeah.
Especially when, you're just not convinced of it. So I think, I think it was justified.
So you push, if you were in Art House shoes, you think his resistance was a good reason for it?
I think so. I mean, he ended up being wrong, but it doesn't mean
Yeah.
he wasn't somewhat justified in his resistance, especially when they were losing for that first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think Billy fired the one scout, but kept Art Howe, even though he kept pushing and not listening to Billy through many, many, many games?
The system still functioned, or like the team, the organization, Oakland Athletics, like still functioned without the head scout. Like there's plenty of other scouts there. Like if you fire the head coach, especially in the season, like that's just guaranteeing that his plan's going to fail. So I think he was kind of stuck with Art Howe. Whether or not he enjoyed him or not, or thought he was a good coach, like it doesn't really matter. Like if you get rid of, I guess, any coach, especially during a season like that's just you're looking to cause dissension within the group.
Yeah, I think Art would like, so the head coach is like a part of that unit cohesion thing that we talked about. Kind of like what Tulio was saying is that like if you take a piece of your team, like a big centerpiece of your team out, like you're kind of screwed, especially if it's like halfway through the season. And I don't know, eventually when Art starts doing what Jimmy's asking him to do, like now he's just doing a job, like even though he's like kind of like hesitant to do it, eventually when he does start doing it, like it's fine, like they don't really have any issues once they start winning games. And I think Billy kind of knew that as soon as his plan would kind of would unravel and show what it's supposed to be doing, that I think that it would turn out okay.
Lynn?
Like Billy's focus is on the players, right? So when he fires the scout's not really a guy that the players see very often, whereas the coach, that's someone who interacts like directly with the players, unlike the general manager. So firing the head coach sort of takes away his direct line to the players.
Yeah. I agree with that. Just like time, if I can go to the next slide here. Mentoring and delegating. So some of the key mentoring that we saw in the film was between Billy and Peter a lot, and then David Justice after Billy had talked with him. So the clip that we were going to show is basically when Billy talks to David Justice about how he wants him to step up, and then you can see him talking to Hatterberg. He said, "How are you feeling at first?" And then he like talks to him for the first time, kind of, so you can see that impact that he had on him. Do you guys have any examples of instances in which Billy mentors Peter throughout the movie? Villanova?
The cutting players thing.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Billy was kind of just like, when you cut players, you just got to be, straightforward with them.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of like made Peter like practice, like cutting, like as if Billy was a player. And then eventually when they were, I forget who he had to cut, but they were making like 2 cuts. And he kind of pointed at Peter and was like, "You're gonna cut him."
Yeah.
And he didn't really give Peter a choice. He kind of like forced him into that learning situation. So I think that was a big part.
Okay. And then did you guys see David Justice as a mentor from that perspective that we're talking about? you see him step up, or do you think he's just kind of an inspiration as a big name player?
I mean, I think he tried. Like, he obviously talked to Hatter in the, I guess it's like the kitchen area.
Yeah.
I don't think he was super successful as it, or at least like the movie like didn't portray him as it. Because what did he say? He said like, "Oh, what's your biggest fear right now?" And he's like, literally having a ball like come towards me on the field, and he's like, "Oh, that's funny. Like, but what actually is it?" And he's like, "That's it." And he goes, "Oh, well, good luck. Like, I hope you get over that." And doesn't really do anything for him. So.
Okay. And then delegating. Do you guys think that Billy uses delegation successfully throughout the movie, or do you think he this kind of relates back to Who Has the Monkey? Do you think he's taking on like too much? Do you think he delegates successfully, or some examples of that? Lynn?
I don't think Billy really delegates that much because he kind of takes all the responsibility and all the accountability like on himself.
Okay.
He's the guy that's like, if this fails, then I'm the one that gets fired, and not like the Yale economics graduate. And so he's not really he's putting himself on the line instead of the rest of the team.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything on that? Okay. Then, any other questions or anything that you think we didn't cover? You want to talk about?
Questions, comments, concerns?
Did you?
Yeah, I just want to. I guess this is just a general question for like the whole class, but do you guys feel like Billy's system was like a success, even though like they didn't achieve his ultimate goal of like winning the World Series? And he never really. I think the movie said like he ever did. So do you think his system was a success, or do you think he kind of just like made something new but never really achieved its full potential?
Not for him, because he retired in 2016 and he never won the World Series, but it said the Red Sox used his method, and they won 2 years later after 86 years, ending the curse of the Bambino. So.
Yeah, I think it was situational. So Talbot talked about like resources and how he just simply didn't have enough resources to, for it to be successful in his terms. But when other teams took it that had more resources, it was definitely a success.
No.
I have just a second question.
Okay.
Did you guys have any discussion while you were creating your slides about the biases in the beginning, like towards players? I think they were like, when they were all in there like meeting, the scouts were like, "Oh, this guy makes really good contact with the ball," or like he looks good and he's like a classic baseball player, as opposed to looking at their like actual stats and their aptitude and
I thought that was kind of another example of sort of single loop, because they're just basing it like the one scout says, "Oh, he has an ugly girlfriend," that means no confidence. Like putting concepts that don't apply to baseball at all in like the same way of thinking. But I also just was like, I guess it's more of a comment really, but I kind of compared that to like what the DC I was talking about when she came to visit us for drill, like seeing value in people that you don't normally see. I think that was a big comparison that you could get from this movie, where Billy and Peter, they're willing to give somebody who throws the ball funny a shot in the big leagues where nobody else will because his stats are good. So I think it's important to see the value in people you don't expect it from. You guys, anything else? Nothing? I think we're good to go then.